Okay, stick with me here because we are starting with a date that, for a lot of people, might just look like another Friday on the calendar, February 6th, 2026.
It's a critical date, though, one that historians might really look back on as a turning point.
Exactly. On that day, the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention issued what they call a red flag alert.
Hmm.
And just the name alone, red flag alert, I mean, it sounds terrifying. It's for Somaliland. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, Somaliland, that's in the Horn of Africa, maybe it's a border skirmish or typical regional instability, you need to pause.
You really do.
Yeah.
Because what we are diving into today is not just a local dispute.
Not at all. It's like a thriller movie script, but it's real life. We're talking about a massive geopolitical chess match.
Yeah.
You've got Israel, China, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the U.S., all of them suddenly fixated on this one strip of land.
And the terrifying part is the Lemkin Institute says we are on the brink of a genocide.
Right. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to unpack how a diplomatic handshake, something that should signal peace, might have actually, pulled the pin on a grenade.
It all comes down to the mechanics of genocide prevention and the law of unintended consequences. The Institute is warning that the Isaac clan, which is the majority in Somaliland, is at risk of being wiped out by Somalia.
And the catalyst for all of this immediate danger, it happened just a few months ago, right? In the late 2025.
That's it, December 26, 2025.
Okay, so what happened?
On that day, Israel became the first UN member state to officially recognize Somaliland as an independent country.
Which, on the surface, that sounds like a huge win for Somaliland. I mean, they've been acting like an independent country for over 30 years.
That's right.
They have their own money, elections, passports. Finally, someone steps up and says, we see you. But you're saying this actually made things worse.
Precisely. This is where it gets so fascinating and, frankly, tragic. The Lemkin Institute argues this recognition, while valid in principle, has made Somaliland more vulnerable.
It was the spark.
It was the spark. You see, Somalia views Somaliland not as a neighbor, but as a rebellious province. It's their territory on the map.
Right.
So when Israel recognized Somaliland, Somalia didn't see diplomacy. They saw an attack on their sovereignty.
So instead of securing them, it just painted a giant target on their back.
Exactly. The fear now is that Somalia will feel forced to launch a military invasion to restore territorial integrity before Somaliland can gain any more political ground. It's a race against time.
And there's this really specific and really nasty rumor fueling all of this, isn't there? I read this in the source material, and my jaw just dropped.
You must be talking about the resettlement allegation.
Yes. The Somalian president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, he actually claimed that Israel only recognized Somaliland in exchange for a place to resettle Palestinians.
Like physically moving them from Gaza or the West Bank to the Horn of Africa.
Which is, well, it's
Yeah.
an incredible claim.
It is. And we have to be incredibly clear here, because this is dangerous disinformation. Both Israel and Somaliland have categorically denied this. There is no evidence for it.
None. It sounds like a total conspiracy theory.
It is. But in geopolitics, especially in these kinds of volatile regions, the truth can often matter less than the belief. This rumor is being used to whip up anger. It reframes the conflict.
How so?
It's no longer just about borders. It becomes about a perceived religious or ethnic displacement. It's a tool to radicalize the population in Somalia against the people of Somaliland. It turns a political dispute into a holy war.
It's just pouring gasoline on a fire. But why is the fear of genocide so specific? People throw that word around a lot, sadly. But the Lemkin Institute, they're not using it lightly here.
No, they're referencing something very specific from the past. The fear isn't hypothetical. It's based on muscle memory. We have to go back to 1987 through 1989.
Hargeisa Holocaust.
Yes. This was under the dictator Siad Barre. His regime launched a campaign against the Isaac clan in the north, what is now Somaliland. And campaign it's too soft a word.
I mean, they had an actual government document called The Final Solution to the Isaac Problem.
The final solution. The Nazi echoes there are undeniable. It's not a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn.
And then the execution was just horrific.
The stats are grim. An estimated 200,000 people died. 500,000 were displaced. And the methods. They poisoned wells. They engineered man-made famines. They used rape as a systematic weapon of war.
And the detail about Hargeisa, the capital.
They leveled it. The Somalian Air Force would take off from the airport in Hargeisa, circle around, and bomb the city right next to it. They destroyed something like 90% of the city.
The Dresden of Africa.
That's what it was called.
And this is an ancient history. We're talking 35 years ago. The people leading the military now, they were there.
That is the crux of the terror. The Lemkin Institute points out that the current Somalian government, represented by their UN ambassador Abukar Dahir Osman, continues to deny this genocide ever happened.
Denial is the final stage of genocide, isn't it? But here it feels like preparation for the next one.
Exactly. If you don't admit it was wrong the first time, you have no moral barrier to doing it again. And here's a detail that will just chill you. There's a man named Colonel Yusuf Abdi Ali, known as Took.
Oh, I saw this. He was in the U.S. for a long time, living in Virginia.
He was working as an Uber driver, but a U.S. jury found him responsible for torture in 2019. It was a huge case. But recently, he was deported. And where did he go?
Back to Somalia.
He was welcomed back by pro-Somali militias in Lasanad, which is a city right in the conflict zone.
So, a known torturer, legally found liable in the U.S., is being welcomed home like a hero by the very people threatening war.
It symbolizes the total lack of accountability. It tells the Isaac people, we did it before, we got away with it, and we were ready to do it again.
That's terrifying. So, you have this historical trauma, you have the spark from Israel, but you also said this is a geopolitical chess match. It's not just Somalia and Somaliland.
No, everyone is piling on. The enemy of my enemy principle is in full effect. The Horn of Africa is becoming a proxy battleground.
So let's look at the map. Who's angry about Israel recognizing Somaliland? The source mentioned Egypt. What's their dog in this fight?
It's rarely just solidarity. It's the Nile.
The river.
The river. Egypt is in this massive, decades-long dispute with Ethiopia over the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Egypt is terrified Ethiopia will cut off their water supply.
And Somaliland has been getting cozy with Ethiopia,
offering them port access to the Red Sea, which is a lifeline for landlocked Ethiopia.
So if Egypt backs Somalia,
they can destabilize Somaliland, block Ethiopia's access to the sea, and squeeze their rival. So Egypt is sending weapons and training to Somalia. It's a bank shot.
Wow, it's so calculated. Okay, what about China? The source says China is funding instability. Why?
Taiwan.
Of course, it always comes back to Taiwan.
Somaliland has diplomatic ties with Taiwan. They're kind of two-of-a-kind, unrecognized democracies. For Beijing, that is a red line.
The one China policy.
Exactly. So China looks at Somaliland and sees a proxy for Taiwan. To punish them, China is reportedly supporting rebels in Somaliland's eastern regions, the SSC Katumo rebels.
So China's fueling rebels to spite Taiwan, Egypt's pumping in weapons to spite Ethiopia, and then there's Saudi Arabia.
This one is interesting. Somalia is trying to drag Saudi Arabia in by playing on their fears of what's happening in Yemen.
Right, the Yemen comparison.
Somalia's defense minister compared the president of Somaliland to the separatist leaders in Yemen, the STC. So Somalia is basically saying, hey, Saudi Arabia, these guys in Somaliland are just like the guys you hate in Yemen. Give us munitions to crush them.
It's so cynical. They're just shopping for a narrative that will get them weapons.
It is cynical, and it's dangerous. It turns Somaliland into a proxy battleground for Red Sea dominance. You've got this greater Israel push on one side, and then the African Union, Turkey, Iran, Qatar, all pushing back.
And caught in the middle are the civilians of Somaliland,
who just want to live their life.
It really makes you realize how fragile peace is. You can build a country for 30 years and it can be threatened overnight because of arguments in Beijing or Cairo. But let's talk about that. If they've been acting like a country for 30 years, why aren't they a country?
That is the question of the century. And legally, they have a very, very strong case.
Can we do a quick history speed run? I learned from the notes that Somaliland was actually independent before Somalia.
That is a key fact, often forgotten. June 26, 1960. British Somaliland gained independence from Britain. For 5 days, they were a sovereign state, recognized by the UN and the US.
And
then, Italian Somalia, the South, gained independence on July 1st, and Somaliland voluntarily decided to join them to create a greater Somalia.
So they decided to get married.
They did. They moved in together. But this is huge. The union was never legally ratified.
Wait, so they never actually signed the marriage certificate?
Precisely. The act of union was never properly passed by both legislatures. And almost immediately, the marriage turned abusive. The Constitution was boycotted by Somalilanders. There was a revolt in 1961. The North was marginalized from day one.
Which leads us to the collapse in 1991.
Right. When the central government collapsed, Somaliland didn't secede. They argued they were just dissolving a failed union that wasn't legal to begin with. They reverted to their 1960 borders.
That seems like a pretty solid legal argument. And if you look at the two regions today, it's night and day.
It really is. The source calls Somaliland an island of stability. You have a functioning democracy, peaceful transfers of power, presidents lose and actually leave office.
Which is rare enough.
It is. And in Somalia, you have a government often described as divided, unstable, propped up by foreign peacekeepers, and still battling al-Shabaab.
So why doesn't the African Union just say, okay, this clearly isn't working, let's finalize the divorce?
Because of the fear of Pandora's box. The AU hates changing borders. They worry if they let Somaliland go, every separatist group in Africa will want their own country.
But didn't the AU look into this? I thought I read they did a study.
They did. Back in 2005, an AU fact-finding mission went there, and their conclusion was startling. They said Somaliland's case is historically unique and self-justified. They explicitly said it would not open a Pandora's box because they were already an independent country in 1960.
So they have the receipt. Their own organization says it's okay to do this, but they still won't.
Diplomatic inertia is a powerful force. No one wants to be the first.
So bringing it back to the Lemkin Institute, they've issued this red flag alert. They're saying genocide is coming. What is their solution? It's pretty radical, isn't it?
It is. They're arguing that the only way to prevent genocide now is full, immediate international recognition.
Which feels counterintuitive. We just said Israel's recognition caused the spark, so wouldn't more recognition cause a bigger fire?
That's the paradox. But the Lemkin Institute's logic is that half measures are what leave Somaliland vulnerable. If only Israel recognizes them, they're a pariah, a target.
It looks like a plot.
Exactly. But if the US, the UK, France, and key African nations recognize them, suddenly they are a sovereign state under the protection of international law.
Safety in numbers.
Precisely. Recognition unlocks the toolkit of statehood. It unlocks foreign aid, World Bank loans, formal security guarantees. Right now, Somaliland can't even borrow money to build a highway because they don't exist on paper.
They're stuck in limbo. And the source makes a really powerful comparison here to Ukraine and Artsakh.
Yes, it compares the denial of Somaliland's sovereignty to Putin's view of Ukraine. It's a refusal to accept that a people have a right to exist independently.
You aren't a country, you're just a rebellious part of me that needs to be disciplined.
Exactly. Putin sees Ukraine as lost Russia. Somalia sees Somaliland as lost Somalia. If you deny their statehood, you strip them of their political humanity. And that makes violence much easier to justify.
That's why the Lemkin Institute is calling on the U.S. specifically. They're saying, you supported Israel's move, fine, but don't leave Somaliland hanging. Finish the job.
Recognize them fully to protect them. Because right now, they're surviving on these piecemeal deals, like the port deal with Ethiopia. But those deals just make neighbors angry without giving Somaliland the shield of statehood.
It's high risk, low reward.
Very. They get the cash for the port, but they get the threat of invasion. And they don't have the U.S. Navy coming to back them up because there's no treaty.
So what does this all mean? We're looking at a situation where a single handshake in 2025 has created this potential catastrophe in 2026.
It really highlights the tragedy of Somaliland's position. They did everything right by Western standards. They built a democracy, kept the peace, fought extremism. And yet, that very success is what threatens them.
It's almost like if they were a failed state, nobody would care. But because they are succeeding, they are a threat.
Success challenges the narrative. If Somaliland succeeds without Somalia, it proves Somalia's incompetence. It proves the chaos in Mogadishu isn't inevitable. And that is intolerable for a nationalist government there.
That is a heavy realization. We're watching this red flag alert, knowing the history of 200,000 dead, seeing the same players, and the international community is just hesitating.
They're sticking to protocol. They're worried about upsetting the status quo. But the Lemkin Institute is screaming that the status quo is what leads to the grave.
It leaves us with a really provocative thought to chew on. We always hear diplomats say never again. They go to memorials, they lay wreaths, but here we have a clear warning, a siren going off before the fire consumes the building.
And the question is, if the only way to prevent this genocide is to do something diplomats hate redrawing the map of Africa, will they do it?
Or will they value the lines on the map more than the people living between them?
That is the question of 2026. And the answer might determine the fate of millions in the Horn of Africa.
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure to break it down.
We'll see you next time. Stay curious and stay informed.